Hello. I want to discuss the issue of identity politics, but particularly within the medium of film and television, because I think it's been a very pertinent issue in recent years. Really, it's been very topical in the last 2 or 3 years. I hope the volume on this is going to be okay. Yeah, this is a subject I find depressing because it is by nature divisive, and anything that's divisive can potentially be depressing because it overshadows positive aspects, in this case, of art, of the medium of art that we see in film. I think it really overshadows that. The debate overshadows it, the subject overshadows it. And it's something I'm sometimes reluctant to discuss because it's the sort of thing that you can be misinterpreted or misunderstood. So when I say I'm critical of the role of identity politics in film, some people might choose to interpret that as, oh, well, this guy is against opportunities for minority actors, which is absolutely not the case. But I do think it's problematic, and I want to explain why. This isn't going to be a hugely comprehensive video because there's a lot of angles to look at with this, but I've got to touch on a few thoughts that I have. Now, number one is, I suppose, a disclaimer or a caveat. Um, I'm not an actor. I'm not a director. I'm not a filmmaker. I have no direct link to the film industry other than being a lover of film. I've got well over 200 DVDs. I go to the cinema regularly. I love film. I think it's a great medium for portraying human stories, for portraying the experience of our times and of times past. It's just a very important and powerful thing in human culture, and it has been for the last 80 to 100 years. Um, I guess that's in a way why I feel it's important to speak out because as a lover of film, as a fan, you can't help but notice this. You can't help but notice this seems to overshadow everything. I mean, the last two or three Academy Awards ceremonies have been overtly political. And it could be argued that there's always been a degree of politics in them. We think back to Marlon Brando boycotting his award because of the treatment of Native Americans, and there's other examples. So there's always been an aspect of politics in Hollywood, no question about it. It's always been there. Um, I mean, looking back to the 50s, to the Second Red Scare, McCarthyism, actors who were blacklisted as communists, all that sort of thing. So there's always been politics there. I wouldn't suggest that this is a new thing, but I think it is injecting films themselves in a way that it didn't do before. So the second Red Scare in the 50s, that was impacting actors, but not necessarily impacting the nature of films in the sense that there wasn't questions about, I don't know, for example, well, how many communists are being depicted in this film? Are It wasn't necessarily brought into the films themselves. There may have been questions about, is this actor pro-communist, right? And that has to be understood also in the context of the Cold War. Now, what we're seeing today, I think, is a manifestation of a real millennial um, philosophy. And I'm saying this as a millennial myself. I was born in 1985, and that's something we need to remember. Anyone born after 1983, well, up until 2001, roughly, is a millennial. So there are many of my generation that are also critical of this. We may be millennials, but we are also critical of how it's being portrayed. Because I think that what this is doing is taking away the enjoyment of film. I mean, I still watch films and I either like them or don't. I don't let anyone else form my views on whether or not I should like a film. So I pay very little attention to critics. I always say they're paid to be critical, but the way I see film critics is they know about the art, they know about the history of film, they know about camera angles and all that sort of thing. But in the end of the day, it really is just their opinion. I've heard critics denounce films, and I ended up thinking, well, that was pretty good, or what were they going on about? And I've heard other films really hyped up, and I didn't really see. I thought they were overrated. So film is like food; it ultimately is down to personal opinion. I believe strongly in that. But what I dislike, like I say, is this identity politics that we're now seeing in film. So we're seeing a situation whereby every big film is being microanalyzed, and even smaller films, films on a smaller budget, are being microanalyzed as to how diverse they are. And I think that's problematic because it's distracting from art for art's sake. Now, I am a strong believer in equal opportunity, right? So I think any actor who feels that they're not getting the opportunities that they deserve, that's befitting their talent as an actor or actress, I think that's I can understand their frustration. I imagine it's one of the most frustrating jobs to be in if you're always doing the same roles. You're spending hours and hours reading scripts. You're getting rejections when you're trying to get out that of that frame. I can imagine it's frustrating, but then other actors opt for that, and they seem to be happy enough with that. They're not the really big names, they're not the Tom Cruises, the Tom Hanks, the Tom Hardys, three Toms there. I wasn't doing that deliberately. That was purely, um, they're not the really big names, but they seem pretty happy with the approach that they have taken, and maybe sometimes that's what they prefer because they don't want the pressure and the attention that comes from being as famous as someone like Angelina Jolie, that sort of level. So they're happier on a slightly smaller scale, but nevertheless having achieved something, having been in successful films. That's. I mean, if I were an actor, every project that I took part in, I'd see it as some degree of success. Even if the film wasn't particularly successful, I'd see it as, well, I done that role, I played that character, I went through that experience, and I think I'd look at it that way. I don't know. I have pondered briefly on the idea of acting, but probably never happened. Anyway, it's just this business of we are getting into a situation where there's constant, what's the best word, scrutiny of how many black actors there are in a film, how many Asian actors there are, how many LGBT characters there are, how are they portrayed, how many leading roles are there for women, all these questions. Now, I'm not going to say that these questions are totally irrelevant. Of course not. I totally agree that if you're involved in the entertainment industry, if you're portraying films that are about life, of course they have to be diverse. But I see a lot of contradictions. And this is one of my main issues with identity politics in the film industry. There are a lot of contradictions. So let me give an example. If, let's say, you have a film where there are eight important characters. Let's say one of those characters is a minority person. They could be Native American, they could be Asian American, you name it. Now, if they are a negative character, let's say, I don't know, they're a thief or they're an alcoholic or they're a bully or something like that, it would absolutely be the case that the filmmaker would be denounced. Oh, you're portraying this character in a negative light. But then, if that character was squeaky clean and really virtuous and really likable person, it could also be seen that they are one dimensional, right? So there's a contradiction in trying to mold characters in a certain way. Surely the issue there is not, it shouldn't be about their demographic, it should be about them as a character. i.e., it's not a case of, I don't know, Jake the Native American is an asshole. It's a case that Jake is an asshole because Jake is an asshole. This is just an example. Um, so I dislike the way there's this kind of perception that when minority characters are portrayed, they have to be, if they are portrayed in a negative light, that means there must be an inherent racism of the filmmaker. Because the follow up to that is, well, are you saying that, I don't know, the white actors therefore have to be the opposite of that person? If you're writing a screenplay and you have a certain storyline, people need to fill that storyline. So this is another thing I really take issue with, and I've been in debates about this with people who have protested about these things. And the debates were civil, but I did see an inherent contradiction. And it's this: when people talk about a lack of opportunities, sometimes I think that needs to be a little bit elaborated, because if you get a character who is, I lost my trail of thought there, if you get a character who's portrayed in a certain way, um, damn, I lost my trail of thought. It'll come to me. Um, oh, that's frustrating in the middle of a video, but I'm not going to restart this. Yeah, you get a situation whereby people are being portrayed in a certain way, but you want characters to be multi-dimensional, right? Now, I remember what I was going to say. You get a situation where sometimes you get actors who are from minority backgrounds, and the accusation is, oh, they're only being typecast. Now, this is one of the main issues I have with identity politics. They're only being typecast, whatever the stereotype is meant to be, whatever that is. But this is a big contradiction I see. If a white actor were to play those roles that is deemed to be for, let's say, British Asian and Asian American character, Black American character, you name it, then the cry is, oh well, they're whitewashing it. Okay, white actors are taking these roles that other people, but it fundamentally comes down to this: you can't have it both ways. You cannot, on one hand, say, oh well, we resent white actors taking these roles because Asian and black and other minority actors have fewer opportunities, which I think is a point of debate. But anyway, because they have fewer opportunities, so that's whitewashing. It's wrong. I personally do understand why whitewashing is controversial. I don't think white actors should play roles that are explicitly for minority, or they are minority characters. There's a famous example of Breakfast at Tiffany's, Mr. I forget the character's name, but Mickey Rooney played a Japanese character. At the time, no one blinked an eye. That subsequently become very controversial. He incidentally that said that no Japanese American ever complained to him personally. So I don't know, but certainly it did become controversial later on, and you could see why would be archaic by today's standards. But the follow up to that is, if a Japanese actor played that role, the same people complaining about that today would be saying, oh, but the director only stereotyped that character to be whatever. So you can't have it both ways, where you're saying, on one hand, we demand that minority actors take these roles and there's no whitewashing, but if we do take these roles, then we're going to complain about stereotyping. But there's a problem with that, because someone has to play the role. If that character is in the story, whatever that character may be, whether they be, let's say, a Hispanic busboy, let's say they are a poor Chinese migrant who has been targeted by people traffickers, let's say they are, um, you name it, right? Whatever stereotypes are deemed to be. Let's say you are a white American who has a strong Southern accent. There's a strong chance you're going to be typecast as a redneck. So I'd say stereotyping is unavoidable in the film industry, because you have to have someone play the role of certain characters. And I would say, I understand if you've been struggling as an actor for years and years, and you want to break through. I do totally understand that. I'm sympathetic to that issue. But if you're starting off, I don't think you can really complain about the roles that you're given. I would say be grateful that you've got the role. This is also something I think there's a little bit of. I'm not going to say it's an easy life, certainly not, but actors have to remember that, and they know this better than I do. There's hundreds of auditions for roles, right? So if they land a role, then I take frankly quite a dim view if further down the line saying, "Oh, I've only ever been given stereotypical roles." Well, you didn't have to take those roles, okay? Someone else might have been taking those roles and paid for those roles without complaining about it. So I what I'm saying is I don't think you can have it both ways. You can't on one hand complain about roles being stereotypical and then complain if white actors take those roles. That's contradictory. And I have seen that argument. I have seen that message being put out. You can't. I mean, if there's a storyline involving minority characters, someone has to do those roles. Now, if I was a director, my main focus would be who best fits this role. Well, I guess it's a producer that recruits the actors, but who best fits this role? Do they lend themselves to the character? Are they bringing across the role in the way I want to see it brought across? That's the things I'd be looking for. I'm not going to think, oh, how many white actors do I have? How many Asian actors do I have? And so on. I want to see who is best for the role. But I also think reality has to figure. If you have a historic film, clearly you cannot have a situation where a historic white person is portrayed by a minority actor or a historic minority his historic character figure is portrayed by a white actor. So you could never have Martin Luther King or Nelson Mandela played by a white actor for obvious reasons. You could never have Queen Elizabeth I played by anything other than a white actress because it just wouldn't be believable. It would not be realistic. There's many other examples. You couldn't have Sun Zhongshan, the founder of the Republic of China, played by anyone other than a Chinese actor, or at least an actor of Chinese descent. Maybe a Chinese Malay actor could pull it off, but clearly a white or black actor couldn't do it. Um, this is not to say that someone who is not fitting the ethnic group or the identity of the person they're portraying can't do a good job. It doesn't mean that they're a bad actor. It's just that it isn't, no matter how good an actor they are, people who have any sense of history know that's it's just not true. It's just not. The problem is, it looks like pushing identity politics. It looks like political correctness. It looks like they're only doing it to tick boxes. That's what it comes across as. Recently, apparently Lady Gaga pulled out of a production. I think it was Lady Gaga because she was portraying an LGBT character, and the LGBT lobby, brought the pitchforks out and said that you can't have that. It's better to give it to a transgender actor. So there's actually an intolerance as well that's growing with identity politics that I think is very regressive. But all of this, what it does is it overshadows. You can't watch an Academy Awards without being lectured, and I find that very unfortunate. I think also there's misleading messages being sent out. One of them, as a consequence of all of this, is, oh, well, white actors must therefore get roles on a plate. I can think of a number of white actors who are always typecast into certain roles. It may be they're always tough working class characters. It may be that they're always gritty sort of characters, but they're getting paid for what they're doing. And in most cases, I don't think they complain about it. So I totally appreciate as an actor you want to span out and do as many different roles as possible. But I also think that the general public look at particularly at big actors on the salary that they get. I really think that people take a dim view of them complaining about life as an actor. So when I see an actress complaining that oh, she's only got 10 million and her male colleague got 15 million, well, okay, there should be an equilibrium, but I think you have to be very careful how you go about complaining because actors work hard. It's long hours and a lot of disappointments. But at the top of the game, they do get a lot of money, a lot. And I think they need to be aware that to the average Jill or Joe watching the film, they would take a dim view of, complaining about their lot when there's people in this world who have absolutely nothing. And then they simultaneously preach to the audience. It's not really, it doesn't go down well. I'm not going to have much sympathy for an A-list actress complaining that she doesn't get enough money. Spare me. That's, I think they need to have a look at the real world. And that's not to say, I mean, actors do a lot for charity and so on. I'm not denying that. But yeah, I just look forward to a time when this, I don't think it's ever going to go away, but I want to see a time when it just reduces in terms of how much it is dominating the film industry, because everything now is about identity politics. Everything is about, it's like a checklist. And people say they don't want to see a checklist, but when they're complaining, they're leading to this checklist situation because producers and directors don't want to be accused of being elitist or being, oh, you're only giving it to white actors or straight actors or men. Um, so I think every individual actor has a different story. If you have a situation where someone is denied an opportunity solely because they are a minority, that's wrong. If that is outside the context of historic films, but I also think it might not be that they're a minority actor. It might be that they weren't best for the role. I think we might actually see a situation where white actors are discriminated against because a director or a producer doesn't want to be accused of not being diverse enough. So you might have a white actor who is actually a more experienced and better actor than a non-white actor, but they're not given the role because the filmmakers don't want to be accused of not being diverse. I think that's wrong. I think the role should go to the best person for the job. It's the same principle as the world outside acting as well, but it also should be realistic. And I just think it's sad that this is overshadowing everything because I appreciate what actors do. They're entertainers. They help us escape from our lives, right? But this never ending narrative, it's because I'm black, it's because I'm white, it's because I'm LGBT, it's because I'm a woman, whatever it might be, I don't think it's helpful. I really, I find it depressing that this is so dominant. And people say, oh, well, it won't be dominant if it's addressed. But it's been constantly addressed. In fact, I don't know what the statistics are, but I would be willing to bet that if you take the representation, for example, of African Americans in film, it is actually probably the same as the wider African American population. In fact, in some cases, you might find there is actually a higher proportion of them represented. And my phone's going, so this is the sort of issue you could be easily accused of things, easily misunderstood. I've tried to explain as best I can. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.